Policies like this only exist to terrorize transgender employees. They only exist to terrorize people who are gender nonconforming or simply don't dress the way that they want them to. One of the things that I thought when I was looking at this is I know so many women who are very transphobic who sharply reject typical feminine gender presentation and expression. And those people are going to be told to put a dress on, to start acting a certain way, to start emulating certain stereotypes of the way that women should be. The kind of situation that they encouraged, the sort of bed that they made is ultimately going to smother them. Before we get into this video, I wanted to let you guys know that it's sponsored by my Patreon. Patreon is where I upload a ton of my personal vlogs and other things that I don't post publicly to YouTube. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely check out my Patreon. If you followed my side channel, you know already that I have pushed all of my content from my side channel to my Patreon and will continue to upload that type of content onto my Patreon. Right now you can see these videos if you are curious. And yeah, I'm excited to expand, and Patreon is exactly how I do that. So if you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon. Hey guys, it's Kat, and we're here to talk about some really annoying transphobia. Before I start this video, I wanted to say that I am indeed trying to get away from making content like this, because I have been making content like this for a really long time. I've been talking about this stuff for almost 2 decades, 18 years of my life. That's most of my life. And frankly, I'm tired. I know that a lot of these conversations are becoming more relevant now, but I've been talking about them for a really long time. And I would like to, as we move into a more scary time for transgender people, start to really pursue the content that I'm passionate about, the things that I really enjoy talking about. Don't expect for this to be a trend. Don't expect for me to talk about this every single time something like this comes up. I wanted to talk about this because I think it relates to a lot of other things, and I wanted to share my perspective on this particular thing as laws like this become more common. And yeah, so hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from and will respect that this is not going to be a trend on my channel. So Texas Agriculture Department's new dress code is based on biological gender. Now, before I read this and tell you guys about this, there are a lot of anti-drag legislations across the country right now. And by the way, these are all forwarded by the same exact group of people called the Heritage Foundation. They are forwarding a lot of laws like this that are trying to make it so that you have to essentially assimilate into gender. You got to do this, you got to do that, or there will be legal consequences. And we've had a lot of examples of people trying to defy it in Tennessee, where a law like this was passed. We saw Lizzo and a bunch of other celebrities bring on drag queens for their performances. I want to say that for me, that is incredibly punk rock. I love the fact that people are doing that they are risking themselves to show their support for gender diverse people. And I am just very thankful for people like that who are willing to stick their neck out like that. People who are not trans, but definitely understand the implications of this. And of course, when drag bills came up, there was a whole conversation about how, no, this is just about drag queens, right? But I want to make it very clear, that's just a smokescreen. These people know exactly what they're doing. And if you read really closely how these rules are actually expressed, you'll see that that's indeed what it's about. It's about that. It is definitely about pushing people towards gender assimilation. So I wanted to read this article on NPR and then go into my thoughts about it, because I think that a lot of stuff like this has larger implications than I think some people are currently able to process. So let's get into it. The Texas Department of Agriculture is ordering its employees to comply with a new dress code, mandating they abide by it in a manner consistent with their biological gender. An ACLU attorney says that it violates federal law that bans employment discrimination based on one's sexual orientation or gender identity. In a copy of the April 13 memo first obtained by the Texas Observer, the new dress code, handed down by Sid Miller, the state's agriculture commissioner, is required by all employees as part of a dress code and grooming policy. Employees are expected to comply with this dress code in a manner consistent with their biological gender, the new policy said. The new dress code restrictions for employees will replace the previous one outlined by the state's agency's employee handbook. The Observer reported the original dress code made no reference to biological gender. The new dress code policy will apply to all employees of the department, including interns and contractors, according to the policy. Those who violate the mandated dress code may face severe consequences and may be asked to leave the premises to change clothes that comply with the policy. If problems with an employee's dress continue, employees can face remedies to and including termination, the memo says. It's unclear whether the decision to change the dress code began within Miller's office or as a result of a mandate higher up within the state's government. The Texas Department of Agriculture did not immediately respond to NPR's request for comment about the new dress code. So, in summary, you have to dress according to your biological gender, which, of course, is based on stereotypes of the way that men are supposed to dress and the way that women are supposed to dress. You got to assimilate into gender because that's what this person's saying, or you risk losing your job. Now, what's so interesting to me about stuff like this is I remember when I was still in my early days of trying to find work, I was on the receiving end of a lot of employment discrimination. And if you guys have followed my story, you know that I was applying for work before employment discrimination laws were written in California to protect transgender people. And so I had a lot of experiences when I was younger of being laughed out of offices because of my paperwork saying this, but me looking like this. I had a lot of issues with finding trans accepting employees. I had a hard time finding employment as a trans person. And of course, that meant that I struggled quite a bit, which is part of why those of you guys who follow me on Patreon already know this, but I moved into this nice apartment and it was a really kind of monumentous moment for me because I never thought that I would be able to afford this. I didn't think I'd be able to pay for my own stuff. I thought that I would always be struggling, and being in a place right now where I'm an open trans person, I can pay my own bills, I can pay my own rent, I live pretty comfortably. That was pretty shocking to me. But of course, the trade-off for me personally is that I make YouTube videos where I talk about really upsetting stuff quite frequently. And so I guess it's a trade-off. But anyway, stuff like this is so interesting to me because obviously it's going to be targeting a very small minority of people who are working in the Texas Agriculture Department who are gender nonconforming, trans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, this is going to create hurdles for employment. And something that I think a lot of people don't get, or maybe they do. Actually, let me walk that back. They do get it. They do get it. They know what they're doing. Most transgender people are just trying to survive. Most transgender people are just trying to make ends meet the way that you are. And when you see people like this, now, of course, this is different than like a law or whatever, but people are going to copy this, right? People who simply do not want to have transgender people in the office are going to make policies like this to discourage transgender people from applying for work or discourage transgender employees from being employed. Policies like this only exist to terrorize transgender employees. They only exist to terrorize people who are gender nonconforming or simply don't dress the way that they want them to. It's really sad to see stuff like this become more common because it's going to create even more hurdles for people who want secure work. And I don't think that we can just dismiss this as something happening at one department, agency, or whatever. It has much larger implications, and the implication is very clear. Assimilate into a gender or you have no access to capital. And that, of course, places your need to survive above your need to be yourself. I think one thing that a lot of cis people take for granted is that the clothes that they wear, the clothes that they feel the most connected to, that fit their body the most, are not alienating to them, right? I, at this point in my life, can wear whatever and feel pretty indifferent about it. But I remember when I was younger and I was applying for work, the idea of dressing in a masculine way gave me a lot of stress. And it is really upsetting to see stuff like this creep up. It is Texas, so I'm not so surprised about it. But I know that just because it's happening in one department in Texas doesn't mean that other people will follow suit. And it's a way for them to, of course, get around those anti-discrimination laws. It is a way for them to deliberately and boldly discriminate against transgender people, and not just transgender people, but also people who don't particularly assimilate into one particular type of gender expression. One of the things that I thought when I was looking at this is I know so many people who are cis women, who are very transphobic, who sharply reject typical feminine gender presentation and expression. And those people are going to be told to put a dress on, to start acting a certain way, to start emulating certain stereotypes of the way that women should be. And that is really heartbreaking to know that the kind of situation that they encouraged, the sort of bed that they made, is ultimately going to smother them. And I'd feel bad about it, but I don't know what you thought was going to happen. I don't know what you thought could possibly have happened when you started to side with the religious right, with the far right, with organizations like the Heritage Foundation that are pushing stuff like this. Of course, they want you to assimilate into gender, because all of this is just part of a much larger goal of instilling fascism and Christian nationalism. That's what this is all about. And we can't live in a Christian nationalist society where people are not assimilating to gender. The gender binary and these ideas of men are here, women are here, and these are two distinct categories. The patriarchy is a very large part of fascism. It is. They basically go hand in hand. So they need gender assimilation. They need for people to be like this or like that. You can't have people in between mixing it up. You can't have the freedom of gender expression, because obviously that would make the structure they're trying to instill less strong. And so it's disappointing, and I wanted to bring this to you. I feel really sorry for the people right now who are in Texas and other states like this, where things like this are being passed in companies or even legally, because it's just creating a situation where people are probably going to have to run away and go somewhere else. And unfortunately, what I've learned is that's part of the strategy. They want for left-leaning people to leave these states so that they no longer have to deal with being outnumbered. They no longer have to deal with people moving against what they want. And easier said than done, but I hope that there are still people who are willing to stay there and stick it out. But I definitely wouldn't blame them for leaving. I think at the end of the day, you got to do what's good for you. And if that means coming to California, that means coming to California. So anyway, I wanted to just share with you guys how I felt about this. Stuff like this is only going to become more common. I'm going to need for people who are not transgender to start making a little bit more noise. I will leave you with this, though. This is a really touching TikTok video that I saw that has something to do with this. And I wanted to show it to you guys to show that, yeah, people can change their mind.
If this law passes on April 1st, public drag will now be criminalized.
Is this true? I live in Tennessee. I'm a Tennessean. I have questions. I just looked up the bill, Tennessee Senate Bill 3, SB 3, and I read it. And before I read it, I just thought maybe they were trying to say, it's illegal for a performer to have a overtly sexual show, like a striptease or a hardcore burlesque show, in a place where children are present. On some level, that made sense to me. Then I actually read the bill, and those types of performers are in the list, but also in the list is something they refer to as a male or female impersonator performer. What is a male or female impersonator? And how do you discern if someone is one of those in a public place? I don't know, Tennessee, it kind of sounds like if you're at a grocery store and you see someone who, based on an article of clothing they're wearing, and some lipstick, and whether they have a physical attribute such as stubble, for example, that they could be in violation of the law and could go to jail. And that sounds suspiciously like they're trying to make certain types of clothing on certain types of people illegal. And that sounds suspiciously like a serious infringement on someone's First Amendment rights. I don't like that. I'm a big fan of the First Amendment. Actually, pretty much everybody I've ever met is a big fan of the First Amendment. So yeah, after actually reading the bill, it sounds like they intend to come for drag performers. Or they could. Sorry, I just got one more question. What is drag? So if old Hemsworth here shows up in Tennessee in a public place somewhere with a single fingernail painted, if this bill's passed into law, would he be breaking the law? All right, Halloween, what if I dress like this for Halloween? Because that's a skirt. How about this one? What about Harry? If this became law and he performed in this state, would he be arrested? I met my first ever drag queen in Austin, Texas when I was a kid. There was a Halloween parade downtown, and there was a drag queen in the parade. And I've never actually known what pronouns to use for drag queens, so I'm just going to use them. And this drag queen, I remember when we saw them, they were ripped, 6'4", big muscles, face full of makeup, wig, 6-inch heels, sparkly dress. And we were laughing at them, not in a nice way. They came over to us and they said, real nice, they said, y'all look great in your Halloween costumes. I hope y'all have a good night. And we were kind of taken aback by them coming over to talk to us and just kind of said, well, yeah, you look pretty wild yourself. And they weren't fazed at all. They said, thanks. I sure am having a great time and I feel beautiful. And they did a little twirl. And then they handed us candy, big handful of Tootsie Rolls and Sugar Daddies. That's kind of funny, actually. And we weren't laughing at them anymore after that. We kind of sobered up a little and said, well, I'm glad you're having a good time. Could we get a picture with you? And I don't know where this picture is. It's on one of my friend's phones from 18 years ago, so I don't have the picture. I'm sorry. But the drag queen leaned over, grabbed us in a big bear hug, took a group photo with us. They said their name was Crystal Rain. Sorry about the noise. I got the street sweeper out anyway. And then Crystal Rain waltzed off and rejoined the parade. I never forgot that memory. And when I read about all this stuff going on with the anti-drag bills, it kind of brought that memory up again. And now, as an adult, thinking back, there was nothing about that drag queen that was sexual or creepy in any way. And honest to God, they were kind of wearing the same type of clothes Dolly Parton wears, when she performs. Wig, glitter, tassels. And they were just nice to us. They were just playful and happy. The only people in the scenario that were putting sexualization onto that drag queen was us. Because we decided to treat them like they were creepy because they had an Adam's apple and were wearing lipstick. And we had issues with it. But not for any reason other than the arbitrary bullshit that we were raised with that now I deeply regret. Crystal Rain stayed with me, and I hope that wherever they are happy and still wearing those 6-inch heels and spreading all the joy that they were at that Halloween parade.
So anyway, on that note, I'm going to talk to you guys later. If you guys enjoy what I do on here, support me over on Patreon. Like I said, I'm going to be soon focusing on creating certain types of content. I'm going to be shifting into more of a film direction. I'm pretty excited about that. Got some really fun things, some things that involve drag queens actually coming up. So I'm really excited to share those projects with you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. On that note, I want you to always remember and to never forget that you're beautiful and you're loved. Bye.